Okay, so we're gonna continue with the story. So, where we last left off was the story of my birthday money. Jimmy took it all, said he used it for parole. God only knows what he really used it for. I'll never know. So, let's say that we keep meeting for a while. Me and Jimmy used to pass those notes, and we would meet around the block underneath a bridge. I would go under the guise of taking my dog for a walk and meet him there. And sadly, not only did the story of his bedroom happen that one time, but it happened again in the woods where we met once before. And all I really remember him telling me afterwards was, "Let me know if you're pregnant." And so here would be a good time for me to back up a little bit and tell you guys this. Jimmy has children, not by me, obviously, by other girls. At the time that he was seeing me, he had a 16-year-old girl pregnant. He told me that baby died. The child lived. The child is his. He has nothing to do with that child to my knowledge. So, I wasn't the only one that was getting punked by him. It wasn't just me. It was other girls, too. And sadly, none of us were brave enough or smart enough or whatever enough to do anything about it. So, with that being said, let's move forward. This was sometime in the winter, and I think it was after Christmas. So I'm going to say maybe January, February. I really don't know for sure. I don't remember. Like I said, there's a lot of this that I've just blocked it out of my memory. I don't want to remember it. I want to forget it. So, with that being said, it's winter still, and we are still meeting around the block, and my mom is still picking me up from school, and one day we're late getting back, and I'm supposed to meet him, and I'm running behind, and I'm such a hurry when we get home to take the dog on a walk. Like, I just run and get the dog and go. My mom knows something is up. She follows me. And Jimmy is not alone when I go to meet him. He has a neighborhood boy with him that was only a couple years older than me. His name was, oh crap, as soon as I was going to tell you guys, it just went out of my head. Anyway, he was a neighborhood boy. He wasn't as old as Jimmy. He was only like a year or two older than me. I think he was like, well, no, he wasn't even a year or two. When I was in 7th grade, he was in 8th grade, so a year older than me. Sorry. So it wasn't that big of an age difference between us, really. And he was hanging out with Jimmy. And my mom chased him up a tree. And then she asked the other boy that she'd known a long, long time. She'd known his family, blah, blah, blah. He grew up in that neighborhood. And I can actually remember playing with that kid when I was a little kid, and we would go visit my granny. So, I mean, we'd known him a long time. And Mom asked him to walk me home. And he'd always kind of harbored this little crush on me. So, that was another story. Yeah. So, yeah. And that was the end of me seeing Jimmy. After that, the notes stopped. And I lost all contact with him. I heard he moved on. So I started trying to pick up the pieces of my life too. But that was really hard to do. Because by then, not only was I cutting, I was into other stuff. I was in trouble at school. My grades had dropped. My relationship with my family was going downhill. And I was majorly depressed. I'd gotten to a point in my life where I didn't care. I didn't care about anyone. I didn't care about myself. And it led me to a really dark point. And I had to hit rock bottom, and that is another story for another time. I'm not going to go into that. But I had to wind up at the bottom of the pit to finally realize that I didn't want my life to be that way. And that if I kept on the way I was going, I wasn't going to have a life. So, let's fast forward. And this has all been through the course of my 7th grade year. I know it seems long, but it really wasn't. So, 8th grade year. 8th grade, I've not seen Jimmy, and we finally go to court. During that whole process, I was fighting it. I was telling them that I consented, all this other stuff. I basically lied and said some of the stuff that happened never happened. And when I finally decided that I wanted to come out about it, it was too late. The case had been picked up by the state, so, I didn't really have necessarily a lawyer. I had the, oh gosh, what is the term? Oh my goodness. She is like the head honcho lawyer for the state. I can't even think of the name. Oh my gosh. Anyway, maybe you guys know what I'm talking about. Otherwise, she was the one who represented me and represented this case. And in the end, they wound up charging him with 2 counts of statutory rape. So, and I don't know if they got 2 counts because I never told anyone about the woods. I don't know if they got 2 counts because he did it on multiple, he did it multiple times that night or what. But they got 2 counts of statutory rape. And I didn't have to testify, but I testified. And by then, I'd had time to let my head clear, and I could kind of see him for what he was, and kind of see the situation for what it actually was. Like, honestly, I was truly a victim. I was a child, and he took advantage of me. He was old enough to know better, but he used me, and he played with me, and he got enjoyment out of it. He was sick and twisted to take a child who knew nothing and father her in ways and try to fill that role and try to act like some kind of a superhero when honestly he was the bad guy in all of it. And I was just the unlucky one in the situation. I was the kid that got taken advantage of. And I still, at 14 years old, I still did not comprehend what had happened to me a year ago. It was very hard. It was extremely hard. So, we sat in that courtroom for hours before our case was finally presented. Obviously, there wasn't a jury because he did plead guilty. And he got a plea deal because of that and because of what I did for him, because I lied for him. He got off easy. So, I said my part about what he had taken from me, and he just looked at me the whole time. He just looked at me with this stone cold, icy look. He wasn't the same person I knew. And to make the matters worse, his mom was there for the hearing, and so was his wife and his child. During the course of this time, he had gotten married to a girl and had another baby. This wasn't the 16-year-old, this was a different girl. So, the judge gave him 6 months in the county jail. It was recommended that he undergo therapy. I don't think he ever went under any kind of, professional help, obviously. But he was court ordered to pay me back the birthday money that he took from me. Obviously, to this day, 8 years later, I've never seen a cent, and I never will see a cent. And it was only $100, but hey, $100 is a lot to a 12-year-old kid, so that was probably like the worst joke ever, you guys. I have a poor taste in humor. I try to make jokes of situations, and they always come out in bad taste. So, anyway, moving on with this lovely story. That's, you'd think that's where it ends. That's where it all stops. There has to be an ending point to all of this, right? Wrong. Jimmy was a disease that plagued me for years. The damage that he did to me was not only physical, it was psychological, it was emotional. It set me up for failure in other relationships, in other life experiences. I didn't know how to cope. I didn't know what to do. And because it wasn't a secret at school, sadly, I ruined myself in ways. I was my own downfall, In high school, he told all the people, all of his guy friends about his conquest of 12-year-old little me. And eventually it hit the middle school. How many 12-year-olds do you know that have sex? And I guess I thought it was cooler to say that than to say the truth. So I kept my mouth shut, and I let myself be branded. And I was branded throughout middle school and high school. I made myself even more of an outcast. I lost friends. Some of the kids, their parents said they couldn't be friends with me anymore because of it. So it made me blame myself even more and say that, it was me. I did the damage to myself. And it took me a long time to realize that not all of the blame was on me. Not all of it was my fault. That I was a victim too in it. That I wasn't, that it wasn't just me, I guess. So, next part of the story. Freshman year of high school. Freshman year of high school, I'd finally started trying to put some of this behind me, but it was really hard to do. Because people still knew who he was. Kids in my grade still knew what had happened. What I had supposedly done. Everything. All those gritty details. And it was in the winter. Probably around February or so. When I got to school one morning and one of my friends told me that Jimmy was in the news and that he'd been accused of murder. My heart raced and I freaked out, and I went to the library right then and I googled him, put in his name, and articles started popping up in county newspapers close by that he'd been arrested, that they'd found a body, that his mom was dead. And I just remember running out to my friends and telling them, because I was so freaked out, because I always knew that he was kind of twisted. He always had this weird side. He used to take and spray Axe on his shoes and his hands and light them on fire. I know he used to abuse animals. He was just... And then thinking back about how he had manipulated me and how I knew I wasn't the only girl, it chilled me to the bone. Absolutely chilled me to the bone. It scared me. It was a nightmare. Just when I thought I was finally to a point where I could leave that part of my life alone, it was back in my face again, because it was all over news, it was in the newspapers, and eventually, obviously because I was a child, and I'm still a child, they couldn't release my name, but eventually it was also in the papers about his 2 counts of rape, so, that just made it even better. And for the people, that knew about that, I'm pretty sure they probably connected that, so, I don't know. It was a lot of uncertainties in the case. The body was found in January, but it had been dumped in December, right around Christmas time. And they never found all of the body. They only found parts of it. And it was found in the woods outside of a trailer park. Why am I saying it? She was found. It was a person. She was found in the woods outside of a trailer park. Like I said, I never knew her, but I did feel bad for the family. And I did feel extremely bad, for the situation, for the circumstances of it all. And so finally, the story that the police put together, the local police, and then they brought TBI in to investigate. The story that they finally put together was that in December, around Christmas time, I think, I can't remember, there had been an argument in the household between him and his mother. There was a scuffle, and they got into a fight, were on the floor. He reached to the nearby entertainment center, tore the DVD player down, and used the cord to strangle her. He claimed that he tried to resuscitate her. She was unresponsive. She was dead. He panicked, wrapped the body in a carpet, dumped it, looted the house, took her car, and left. Work never reported her missing. Like I said, there was a lot of uncertainties and a lot of strange things about the case, things that didn't make sense, things that couldn't be put together. How they found the body was a dog that belonged to one of the residents of that trailer park dragged pieces of the body into the yards. So it was not long after that, like, they caught up with him a couple weeks after the body was found. It led to him, and he was hiding out. He'd come back to the county and was hiding out here, and they found him simply because they found his mom's car. So they took him into custody, charged him with, what did they charge him with? Abuse of a corpse, grand theft auto, theft of property worth over $1,000, criminal homicide. So I followed this story closely, and I don't know why I followed it so closely. I guess it was because I knew him, because it hit at home, because I wanted to know what happened. I'd gotten to the point where I always believed that even though he wasn't punished on earth as he should have been, that one day God was going to judge him for his actions. And not just for me, but for all the other girls that he hurt and took advantage of too. And when it finally came to trial, he took a plea, again, pled guilty on all accounts, and they went easy. And I know I was shocked, but I honestly think the community was shocked too when it came out that he only got 25 years in prison. No parole. 25 years. No, maybe a quarter of his lifetime. I don't understand why people can commit such heinous crimes. Murdering their own family, and they get a slap on the wrist. A few years in prison. Big deal. What about all the lives that you ripped apart? Your own family you ripped apart. I'll never understand that. Never. And you would think, that the story would end there. He's in prison now, right? He can't talk to you. He can't get to you. It doesn't end there. Does not end there. It was a few years later before he re-entered my life. Eventually, the media stopped covering the story, and it was forgotten. It was an ugly secret that everyone just tried to put behind them. Everyone tried to move on with their lives. Any community does that with a tragedy. Eventually everyone is just so done with the grief, with the sadness, with the ugliness that you want it to be over with. So I was a senior in high school, and I was taking culinary arts, criminal justice classes, and I was really into it. And I really thought for a while that this is it, you guys. I'm going to law school, and I'm going to put those bad guys where they ought to be and make sure that they get what they deserve. And I guess maybe it was my kind of vengeful spirit or mindset or whatever, of all the people that have hurt me and all the wrong that I've ever seen done and people have not paid for it, that made me want to do that. I don't know, but I was really into it, and I really thought it was what I wanted to do. So towards the mid of the year, our teacher assigned us a project to do a report on a serial killer. And there's tons and tons of famous serial killers throughout all of history. There's Zodiac, there's Donner, there's Bundy, there's Gacy, there's Ed, what is his name? He made furniture out of dead people. Ed, what's his face? I mean, there's tons of them you could choose. I had my mind set on one. He wasn't a serial killer, but I wanted to do my report on Jimmy, especially considering I had personal knowledge of him. And in taking that class, I really realized in learning some of the things I did, we learned about, things that can lead to criminal behavior, signs. Jimmy had pretty much every single one. He was dishonest, he was manipulative, he was good at lying, he was... Basically, it was like he didn't have a conscience. Like, seriously, he seemed to have no guilt, no remorse. He was abusive towards animals. He was toxic. Jimmy was just toxic from the beginning. So, I went to my teacher and I told him about it. And considering it was a student even that had walked the halls of that high school, he let me do the project. And so that was my chance in school to really, and even though it was like 5-6 years after it had happened, it was my chance to kind of set the story straight with some of my peers and some of my classmates and let them know what really happened. Even though I didn't really go into that part a whole lot, I mostly just told about the facts about the case, what I actually found that I believed to be factual about the trial and the evidence and everything about that. So, with that being said, it wasn't long after I did my report that I started getting strange messages on Facebook from someone that I did not know. And the Facebook messages, I actually have them. I actually saved them, and I'm actually going to bring them up and read them to you guys. So, because that better explains it than I can.